Hey, welcome back to another Habs Notebook Show with hockey coach Francis directly for the beautiful country of Thailand on amazing great Tuesday night, December 10, 2024, 10, 15 days before Christmas. And I can't wait to get there. Why? Because the best time in hockey, I believe, is the World Junior Championship start. And this year will be the same thing, Team USA, Team Canada. And this year, the World Championship is junior is in Ottawa. So we're going to give you all the details of that tournament in the next couple of days. I'm going to follow, of course, the play-by-play of the Team Canada has joined the tournament. So I see uh, around the channel to hear a little bit more about the tournament. But tonight, we have a big subject talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Why Tuesday night the notebook? Because tomorrow we do a couple of times the Laval Rocket play-by-play game. And tomorrow they play at home against the Rochester American. So that's the reason we move the notebook show Wednesday to Tuesday. And we're going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. The biggest subject of the night, honestly, it could be controversy. It could be, depends what you think about that. But imagine this one time. If the Montreal Canadiens have Patrick Laine, Mitch Cobb, got another point tonight. I don't want to say anything about that. And then Demidov, all three together. Imagine that the 2 minutes. Imagine what it would be look like the roster of the Montreal Canadiens if three players together would play the Montreal Canadiens. And then if you follow my channel, the Hockey Nation, you have another video about the Montreal Canadiens. He did it again and again. His third goal of the year. And I'm talking inside of this video. I'm talking about Emil Eneman. He's rolled with the Montreal Canadiens. So every day we deliver videos about the Montreal Canadiens at least 5 times per week. So you can check your notification. It usually is out at 6 a.m. Eastern time. So that's the way to see those videos, to watch those videos. 11 game in NHL tonight, by the way. A lot of action, I believe. And then talking about the Flyers. They just scored under the goal, lead 4-1 against the Golden Blue Jacket. Colorado lead 3-1. And then the Toronto Maple Leafs. Marko was talking about this game. It's 1-0 Devils, but the shot are 25 versus 6 for the Devils. And the game running follow tonight is the Calgary Flame. And why? Because the draft pick for the Montreal Canadiens. It's 2-1 Nashville. I believe Nashville tried to snap a 7-game losing streak, a losing game right now to the Nashville Predator. On the notebook tonight, I'm not alone. We have a co-host always with me, directly from Osbury. We have Marko Larabi. And sometimes we invite friend people to join the notebook. Tonight, he's back at home after a couple of days in the Orlando area. And now he's going to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. He sit at the Nova Scotia. And we welcome both of them. Marko Larabi and Devin are back in the house tonight.
I love entering to a round of applause. Entering to a round of applause, man. Nothing better than that, right? Devin, welcome back home, sir. You look relaxed.
Thank you.
You look. Let's see. We can't really see if you're tan. How was Florida, man?
I got a little bit of a tan. You can see it on my watch, but that's about it. Yeah, Florida was good. Yeah, it was relaxing. Did a little bit of Disney. Just kind of, it wasn't super hot, low 20s. Obviously better than here, but not, Florida hot. But it was kind of nice. It was nice to get away. Yeah, it was a good time. Orlando has been beaten up a little bit by hurricanes lately, if you haven't been there. So the area that we were staying in was a little bit beat up, but no, we had a fun time, and I'm glad we went. And it's nice to be back, and it's nice to be back with you two. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Awesome, Marko. Was your week?
It's a pretty good week. Just busy with work, ramping up here end of year. So on vacation soon as well. So just wrapping up some things end of year, with work and getting ready for 2025. Should be a very busy year where I work. So getting all amped up for that. And as you said, Coach, getting really excited here for World Juniors. Really exciting December for Habs. Really excited to talk to you and Devin about last couple games and kind of what's up and what's coming ahead. It should be good.
Usually, I know is Augsburg is what 90 minutes from Ottawa. How long it is?
Yeah, it's about an hour and a half, depending on traffic. Like, it's literally right in the middle of Montreal. It takes the exact same amount of time to drive to downtown Montreal to downtown Ottawa. So it's about an
Really
hour,
in the
20
middle.
minutes. Yeah, literally right in the middle, which is
But
great because
usually the weather in Quebec City is different like Montreal, right? So approximately 2 hours, 1 hour, 90 minutes, 2 hours to go between Montreal and Montreal and Quebec City. But is it the same weather between Ottawa and Hawkesbury or a different little bit?
yeah, like I'd say it's like the weather systems, depending on kind of kind of what's happening with the weather, like it might be slightly different, right? But the temperature and everything is pretty much the same. Like sometimes, like when you're driving, like you'll miss the rain, right? Like you're kind of like driving away from the rain or towards the rain or towards the snow. When we went to Montreal for work last week, it was we basically beat the snow on the way back. Like it was snowing in Montreal when we were leaving, and as like the snow was following us as we were driving to Hawkesbury. So we drove like about 120 clicks on the way back to make it back so that we didn't get caught in the snow. So yeah, it's usually pretty similar.
I think you have some snow today in Montreal or something like that, or maybe yesterday.
Lots of snow. Like I have about maybe I don't know, like 5 inches of snow down here now, 5 or 6 inches of snow. So it's very Christmassy. Definitely got my first couple of like driveway shovels in. So we're in the midst of it. Winter is officially here for sure.
Awesome. So you both of you are ready for the winter time, honestly. We have a few people knocked it out. Peter Pinsonneau, Excel, welcome in the show. Thanks for everybody to be a part. The moderator, Run with Kings, is in the house tonight. Run with King, big fans of the Kings and the team Utah. Both of them are in action tonight. The Kings lead 2-0 against the New York Islanders. Patrick Roy. And before we talk about the headline we got tonight, we're going to talk a little bit around the NHL very quickly. Not much, but I think there's some things going on around the NHL. I think the biggest things is really what's going on with the New York Rangers. Trouble and the Madison Square Garden or the Big Apple. Maybe not, they was the fans, sports fans in New York was very happy with the contract of Yuan Soto. But what's going on with the New York Rangers with a lot boo at the end of the game when they lost, but they scored 2-1. Traded Trouba last week and not looking good. You have some kind of rumor between Kachuk, honestly, in Ottawa and New York Rangers. That's another story, but a lot of things going on there. And, and what do you expect? What do you think? And this is the team for me, was the top three best team in the Metropolitan, in my opinion. And they are not there yet. And are they going to turn around that season or not? So I will let Marko starting with the New York Rangers, the situation, and what do you expect for until the end of the season?
Yeah, coach, like right now the Rangers are the talk of the town all across the NHL, right? And not for the right reasons, for based on it's surprising, right? Like they're still in a decent, like I think they have that second wild card spot right now, but that's well below kind of what most of us thought they would be at this point, right? So we know that the owner for the Rangers is quite emotional, and go back to letting go of Jeff Gordon just randomly and John Davidson, just because of what happened, I guess, with Tom Wilson and the Washington Capital game and all that. Wanted to get a little tougher. So, to me, like this, what happens, right, when you have a GM that basically throws a grenade into his locker room, basically sending a note to all the GMs saying that two of his key leaders are in play. It goes back to the summer, them going to Trouba and kind of asking him to get traded after only 2 years of him being the captain there. So to me, this is self-inflicted wounds, by Chris Drury. To be honest, like you can debate about how the roster is constructed. That roster has been together now for at least 4 or 5 years. They've kind of added to the edges of it at the trade deadline over the last couple of years, but it's relatively the same team, right? Like the core of it. And so maybe it's a team that just needs a little bit of shakeup, but it's very hard to do that in the salary cap era, right? Like, obviously trading Trouba away, to me, like, okay, it makes a statement to the team, but they haven't obviously responded the right way. If you ask me, like, are the Rangers a better team without Trouba? No. Like, he's an absolutely, in my view, a top 4 defenseman in the NHL. Like, that brings a lot to the game. Obviously, he's outgrown his 8 million, 0.6 million, or whatever he makes contract, but that's what happens with these kinds of deals, right? So, Peter Laviolette, that's another question there. Like, we know that he has the reputation for really driving a team in his first year and getting amazing results. And then it slowly starts to kind of fade out after that. And the players kind of have a little bit, too much of him, and things start to kind of deteriorate. So a lot of smoke there. Like, the big question is, what is the problem? Is it the chemistry of the players? Is it just a little bit stale? Is it the coaching? Like, the Rangers are one of the worst. We talk a lot about the defensive system here in Montreal. The Rangers, if it wasn't for Shesterkin, they are, like, in terms of like underlying numbers, the worst defensive team in hockey right now in terms of high danger scoring chances. So it's a real kind of like garbage truck fire there over their coach and Devin. So I don't know, Devin, like, I'm sure you've been keeping an eye on it. Like, what are your thoughts, man? Like, is it just really Chris Drury blowing things up, or what do you see there with their lineup?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'll be a little bit more philosophical about it. I mean, to me, the way I see the Rangers is, and when I say philosophical, I mean sort of not sort of X's and O's about it, but to me, the Rangers are an old school franchise, and they run their franchise in an old school way, and I think that they're kind of falling behind. They've obviously got a good team, but they haven't been able to take the step to the next level. Um, Personally, I think they abandoned their rebuild too soon. You spoke about their owner being volatile and sort of reactionary. I think they're a reactionary organization. They're not unlike the Canadiens were, in recent times, where things would go wrong, and you constantly feel like you need to be fixing things all the time, rather than just sort of realizing that you might go through some rough patches from time to time, and you just need to survive them and come out on the other end. Um, you've got an old school coach, you've got an old school former player GM, you've got an owner that's kind of, like I said, volatile and reactionary, and I think it's hurting them right now. I think it's it's coming. They've tried to be this rough and tumble team, right? I think they've made some philosophical mistakes as far as their the identity of that team, right? On one hand, they rely on guys like Zibanejad and Panarin and whatever, but then they've got this idea that they also need to be Matt Rempe and Jacob Trouba and that those kind of guys. Now, I get that you need to have a combination of all of that, but to me it was just kind of, there was no sort of consistent idea of what they wanted to be, and they were just sometimes when you don't have a plan and you don't have an idea of what you're going to be, you just sort of end up being nothing, if that makes sense. So again,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that they kind of abandoned their rebuild before they ought to have. I mean, I know they got Panarin, and that kind of gave them a little bit of a boost, and they thought that, well, now we can come out the other end. But I just feel like they haven't managed that organization very well. You talk about the firing of Gorton. You talked about all of these things that they just haven't. What I really love about the Canadiens right now is that they've got a plan and they're sticking to it. I just don't feel like the Rangers have had a plan, and they're sort of acting on an ad hoc basis. They're sort of whatever comes across their way, they're reacting to it, as opposed to having a long-term plan. In a direction that they all are heading towards at the same time.
I think you're right. Like, the consistency is weird, right? Like, so they get rid of Jeff Gordon because the owner was embarrassed how Panarin got manhandled by Wilson that one time, and then so he comes in, and then in the very next trade deadline, they spend all these assets to go out and get Kane and Tarasenko, right? So those are not really prototypical kind of like, playoff performers. Like, they're amazing players, right? But not really the kind of players that they needed at that time. Like they just didn't fit in that lineup. So just a lot of inconsistency, like you said, about a plan. Like if Chris Drury was bought there to bring them like a tougher, make them harder to play against kind of thing and be a little bit more respected and harder to play against. He just hasn't followed through. He got like this summer he got rid of Goudreau, which was probably was their best player in the first round last year, like led them in goals. So just a little hard to follow kind of what Chris Drury is doing there. So should be interesting. The coach is always the first one to pay though.
Great comments
Yeah,
about. I like both comments about New York. And I just want to go to the Anaheim Ducks on that one. I think the Ducks. This is going to be only a passenger at the with Anaheim Trouba, and I think this is a kind of trade usually Canadiens will do, like maybe 1 year ago or maybe 2 years ago, where you get a players at that level, and it costs much. They don't cost too much in return if you think about this. To the Anaheim Ducks, and it will bring Trouba for 1 more year at 8.5 if my
8.6 or something like that. Yeah.
okay. So he's going to finish this season with the Ducks, and next year he's going to be on the trade deadline market, I believe, and returning 50%, so he can be traded at $4 million, and then he's going to become UFA. I think you can get at that level maybe a first round pick, late first round pick for that. So Trouba, I think Pat Verbeek, that's what I believe he's going to do with Trouba, and I don't see Trouba inside of and Anaheim Ducks a long term. If you think about Kudas, he's over there, and they have many young defensemen coming. So I think this is the reason I think the Ducks did it. My opinion, the purpose of that. For the Rangers, I think they had to they have no choice. I think Schneider is going to become a better defenseman overall at Trouba, and the fact Chesterkin need money for his contract, that will give them a better. Now they have $21 million. Now you're going to tell me they're going to get players, but remember Lafreniere jumping for 2.5 to $7-8 million. Chesterkin jumping for 5, so you have about another $10-12 million will be out of the salary cap, so they're going to carry on and maybe an extra 10, 11, $12 million next season. But we'll see. We're going to talk about the Rangers a bit later and the clash. So don't miss the clash a little bit later. Before we go to headlines, I want to finish with that. The trade Colorado San Jose. So I'm going to talk about Devin. What do you think about that trade? And maybe what's the key players for that trade for you for one specific team or other team? So Devin, let me know what you think about that.
you talk about the goalie trade, Blackwood and
Gorgiev.
Gorgiev. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll have two things to say about that. I mean, the first thing is that if you're very confident that Caden Primo will clear waivers, then just look at that trade and see some of the goalies that are being moved around. See how desperate some teams are for goalies. I think for Colorado, it's just a case that they've basically changed their entire goaltending lineup because it wasn't working. And I mean, I guess it wasn't a surprise. I don't think anybody would have been surprised that Georgiev and Anaheim didn't work out. I guess it's Blackwood and Wedgwood they have now. Is that right? I guess they're going to roll the dice and see if these guys will be any better. I mean, obviously, I don't know that they could be any worse. Colorado does have some experience winning the Stanley Cup with mediocre goaltending, so maybe they're relying on that a little bit. But I think it's more of a case of Colorado just realizing they had to do something about their goaltending, right? I think they kind of went into the season with their fingers crossed, hoping it might work out. That one of those two goalies would play better than they have in the past. They didn't, and it's just they're shaking things up, and I think Blackwood in particular, I think has the capability to be a decent NHL goalie, but again, I mean, those two guys don't strike me as guys that are going to carry you to the promised land. But time will tell. Goaltending can be very up and down in the NHL. We've seen guys who had previously not been very good become very good, and we've seen guys who had previously been very good not be good. So, I mean, I don't know what to say from the San Jose point of view. I think San Jose is just kind of, working around some assets. Yeah, I think it's just Colorado just realizing that their original goaltending plan wasn't working, and pulling the trigger on it sooner rather than later, instead of sort of letting it ride out and seeing if it might eventually turn into something positive. They felt like they needed to make a change.
Marko?
Yeah, I actually saw something pretty interesting about this. They had was it Steve Valaket? Is that the former goalie there that's an analyst for the Rangers? He had a pretty interesting take on it. He was looking at the underlying numbers for both these goalies, and he's really questioning whether this is the good fit actually for Colorado. So if you look at Blackwood's numbers, he has like a 911 save percentage, which is really good, and he's right up there in terms of goals saved above expected for high danger chances, right? But what he points out is that San Jose, they're first in the league at giving up low danger scoring chances as well, right? So, you know how just as an eye test, there's certain goalies that play better when they get lots of shots, right? Like they get into a rhythm kind of thing. So Blackwood, his analysis was saying that Blackwood did pretty well in San Jose because yes, he was saving a lot of high danger chances. But that's because he was getting a lot of low danger chances and he was kind of getting into a rhythm. So sometimes if you transpose that into Colorado, what was happening with Gorgiev is that he was, Colorado would dominate, because they're an amazing offensive team. And all of a sudden they would give like 2 or 3 high danger scoring chances, and 2 of them were in the net in the first period because Gorgiev wasn't getting that kind of volume to get warmed up. So it will be interesting to see if Blackwood is able to adapt to play what you call in a winning environment, right? Like it's one thing to stand on your head when you're playing in that kind of environment, but he's yet to prove that he can bring those kinds of results in a team that's more organized and that's going to have a little bit of better of the puck share, right? So it should be interesting to see. And Gorgiev, don't be surprised if Gorgiev actually starts to play, his numbers go up because again, San Jose is going to give up a lot of volume, low danger chances, so shots are going to go up. That's why, Coach, I don't believe in save percentage. To me, is a very misleading stat, right? Like it's not what it used to be. I really like goal saves saved above expected, and goals saved like in high danger scoring chances in the slot. To me, those are some interesting things. And by the way, while we're talking with Steve Valaket on the show, I was watching, they were asking him about Sam Montembeault as well, and he had a really high praise for him. He was looking into him. And did you know, Coach, that last year Sam Montembeault was first in save percentage for shots that were screened, for example? Like there's a couple of those statistics that were interesting, but should be an interesting trade to see. Like I agree with Devin, very little to lose for Colorado. This is only the second time in history, guys, that an NHL team has swapped out its entire goaltending lineup, like both goaltenders mid-season. It's only the second time in all of the NHL history that a team has done that. So,
Maywall, the funny thing about that, both goaltender, it was the goalies for the New Jersey Devils 4 or 5 years ago. It was the goalies for them. So they see them returning together, and both of them had different direction. One Dallas, one San Jose, and now they are back in Colorado. So it would be interesting. For me, the player we don't talk about that is Nikolai Kovalenko. This is a player I believe San Jose could appreciate. It could become a guy like Nino Niederreiter and NHL. We'll see, but maybe not physical like him. But Kovalenko have a lot of great upside of his career. It was his first year with Colorado Avalanche, and it will be the key player I'm looking for San Jose on that trade. In my opinion,
he's like 26, though, right? Like
he's not a young 25 now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is the son of who?
The tank. Kovalenko.
Andre Kovalenko, he was involved with what?
He scored the last goal at the Montreal Forum, or the first
and
at
the
Bell
was
Center.
Part of the which trade?
Oh, the Patrick Waugh trade, for sure. But he's also the one, I think he scored the last ever goal at the Montreal Forum, if I'm not mistaken.
Number 51? 51?
Yeah.
Is that his number?
96
Yeah.
or something like that, if I can recall it. A
Number
couple of
51.
news around the NHL, if you don't mind. Shattenkirk, after 14 years, decided to retire as a defenseman. Shattenkirk, honestly, a couple of games he played with many years with the New York Rangers. You remember him, Tampa Bay, Boston, Anaheim. He traveled a little bit. Zegras looking for a second opinion about his knee injury. We have to wait a little bit the development about Zegras. And the coaches carousel, I think Marko and Devin, it could consist in the next couple of weeks. It could be Detroit, Rangers, Nashville. I think there are three teams right there. They may be looking for a coach situation if the team does not come back. Very interesting, the Dallas Star. The reason I'm talking about the Dallas Star is because the Dallas Star lost Dallas again. And now they open up a $9 million approximately open up for them, and he's not going to return it before the end of the season. So could be the Calgary Flame with Kadri and Anderson. On the flip side, I don't know. And then my question before we move on with the headline Montreal Canadiens, what do you think about the Flame? Do you expect them to say, you know what, whatever, we have a good year, we're still hanging there, but maybe not? And do you think they will fire sell, or they going holding everything the card and you go only maybe a little bit a trade but not the player impact like Kadri and Anderson, Marko?
I think it's somewhere in between. Like, I think they're going to keep Anderson. I think it would be crazy to trade Anderson, to be honest. Like, he's a core piece. He's only 28 years old. To me, that's a guy that you want as part of your retool or whatever you're going to do. If you're a Conroy, like Craig Conroy, you want a guy like that to kind of build around. I think Calgary's already hurting at center, coach. Like, they're already looking for another center, right? So unless they're packaging Kadri with something else to backfill another center role, I don't see them doing a fire sale. Like, it's like, remember Devin was comparing the Rangers to Montreal before. Like, I think Calgary's kind of like in that same mode, right? Like, I don't think that marketplace is ready for a rebuild. I don't. I think they want to retool. They have some pretty big some guys on some big tickets right now, like Huberdeau and those guys, which are pretty much immovable. So to me, I think they're more in a retool. So could Kadri move? I'd be surprised. Like, they'd have to retain quite a bit. I think he's still got like 4 years left. But I like Kadri. Like, I think he's probably going to be a pretty effective player well into his 30s, if you ask me. So I think it would be a great fit as a second line center, for sure. So if somebody can pry him out of Calgary, like that's a nice piece to add for sure.
Would be very interesting what happening with that. We move on, again. We hit the 9 o'clock, and we have to move on with a lot of talking about the Montreal Canadiens. So let's move over there. Like we do at the beginning, we do the headlines, and we're going to move on that direction. And we're going to start with Marko on this one, followed by Devin and myself. This is the ritual of the deadline for when we do that. And the first one is going to be with Marko. And Marko said, here we go.
We'll know by the end of December, guys. I think we'll have so obviously we've been talking since the beginning of the year, since the golf tournament, about being in the mix. Right now, if you look carefully, Montreal is only 4 points out of a wild card spot right now. So my position is still pretty much the same. I don't think Montreal will make the playoffs, but I think for me, I still, based on how Montreal has been playing over I'd say even since mid-November, maybe even a bit before that, with playing a little bit better defensively, and with their record 3-1 since Patrick Laine has been there, I think it merits kind of like asking that question again, like, can Montreal be in the mix? And I think we'll have a really good idea of what that looks like in December. Coach, I sent you, I don't know if you have that graphic of kind of what their next games look like.
I tried to move on. I cannot copy it, so I don't know why.
Okay. It's all good. So if you look at the next couple games, though, guys, like, I think I can pull up the schedule here. So they, obviously we know that they just went through and they had Anaheim. So they have Pittsburgh in Montreal coming on Thursday. Then they come home to Winnipeg. But really, the crazy one is next week, right? You're looking at Buffalo and then Detroit back to back, right? To me, that week is so interesting. Coach, in our summer preview, we talked about one of the critical things that we need to look at throughout the season is Montreal's record against the Atlantic Division, right? So far their record against the Atlantic is, if I'm not mistaken, it's above 500, right? So that's pretty good. So, to me, and then after that they play Columbus, and then they go for what's going to be a really, really tough trip in Florida, and then in Vegas, I believe, for the end of December, right? So I think by the end of that week, like after those games against Detroit, we're going to have a really good idea, right? Like if they're still, like 4 points behind the wild card spot. And it's funny, guys, like I watch all kinds of different coverage, all kinds of different, kind of shows around hockey and all kinds of people. And they always talk about, hey, does Detroit, Buffalo, or Ottawa, which of these three teams are going to break through? And never does anybody ever talk about Montreal. And they're only 1 point behind those teams, right? So if they're able to go through and come out with a winning record against those teams, maybe the conversation gets a little bit different. Maybe some of these analysts all across the NHL that don't even think about Montreal at all, like. I watch a lot of coverage on all kinds of different platforms, and you never hear anything about Montreal, right? So it would be nice just to be in the conversation at least. We know what the long-term plan is, but I think it's really important for this group of players to play some important games, continue to learn how to play to win. We've talked all year about this, Coach. Like this year is all about evaluating who they have and learning how to win, right? So I really like what I've been seeing here over the last couple of weeks in terms of how they're playing. Obviously, it's not perfect. There's still some players that are struggling, and I'm sure we'll talk about that today. But there's a lot of good stories, and it would be really, really fun if they could, have a good performance here, specifically against, like, in order for the games to matter against Buffalo and Detroit, they have to win at least one or two of these games this week and this weekend, right? So that's what I'm hoping for, is like just to keep it interesting. It would be fun if they could be in the mix, in the conversation a little bit more, so we can see how these players react when the expectations are changing. Like right now, there's no expectations still, right? Nobody is talking about Montreal other than us and people in the market, right? But all of a sudden, how do these players, how does Suzuki, how does Caulfield, how does Montembeault, how do those players react when all of a sudden the league and other markets in the NHL are talking about Montreal being in the mix? I think that's a really important exercise for them to go through, and I hope it happens.
Awesome. We're going to go with Devin. Devin, here, your line. I modified this, so I just shut the line. Doc, let him alone.
Yeah, my point here is that, obviously Kirby Dach is struggling. I don't think it's any secret. But I think it's pretty clear at this point that the issues that he's dealing with are more in his head than they are physical. I still see people wondering whether or not his knee is still bothering him. And I think it's pretty clear that it's not. If you watch him interviewed, I watched the post-game interviews after yesterday's game, and he's just like, if you compare an interview with him from last night to an interview that he would have done, let's say, last season last year in the preseason, he's not, he doesn't even look like he's the same human being. Like he almost looks like he was going to cry at times when he's been interviewed lately. And for me, I think that the entire world seems to have an opinion about Kirby Dach and what needs to happen with Kirby Dach. And the reality is you just need to leave him alone. You need to let him play, and you need to let him work his way out of this, right? It's not about, benching him. It's not about, putting him in the press box. It's not about moving him down the floor. It's not about, putting him on a different line every night. It's not about, trying to fix this problem, because the problem right now is in his head, right? Like on one hand, he's being, if you listen to, I listen to the post-game interviews and then the interviews that they put up on YouTube, the reporters are continuously asking him, do you still feel hesitant out there? Like, are you still, worried about this, that, and the other thing? And then you watch him play, and he goes out and he's trying to be more aggressive, right? He's trying to be more aggressive because he's counteracting this view that he somehow is, still hesitant on his knee. And of course, because he's being more aggressive, he makes mistakes. And then all of a sudden, everybody's asking him questions about, the turnover he made or the bad pass he made. Like last night, people seem to be blaming him for a pass he made behind the opposing team's goal, and they attributed that pass to a goal that was scored 200 feet away. Right? Everyone is looking for him, and the microscope is on him so tight. So when he makes a mistake, then people wonder, oh, is he being too aggressive? And he's being pulled in both directions. Right? On one hand, he's trying to be more aggressive because he doesn't want to be seen as favoring the injury, and on the other hand, he's trying not to be too aggressive because he's making mistakes, and it's just playing with his head. And we forget how young this kid is, right? He's been around for quite some time, but he's still 23 years old, maybe 24 now. I think he's 23. He's still a kid, and he's still learning, and having to deal with all of this from the media and the fans. And again, I don't know how much he follows. Some players follow the fans and whatever, and some don't. I don't know, but you can just tell that this kid is just being pulled in all kinds of different directions. And at the end of the day, for me, I think he just needs to be left alone. You put him on a line, you put him with the same guy so he has some consistency, so he has a routine, and you let him work his way through it. Like last night, we saw him score a lucky goal. He got a lucky opportunity. Sometimes that's all it takes, right? And then maybe he works off of that, and he builds on that. But again, trying to fix things all the time isn't always the answer, right? Like if you've got I don't know if you're married, Marko, or what you're, like when you're in a fight with your wife, sometimes it's better just to leave it alone, right? You don't, whether you've got good intentions or bad intentions, whether you want to continue the fight or whether you want to try and fix it, sometimes it's better just to, let her go her way and you go your way, and then, let it sort of fix itself. And I think that's kind of where we've gotten with Kirby Dach.
Yeah, and luckily I don't have media asking me questions about what happened with that fight with your wife. Like that would not be easy. The great you were talking about, watching the press conferences and everything. I think the best way that I've heard anybody kind of articulate what Dach is going through is Martin Saint-Louis himself. Like, do you remember the thing where he described where right now he's looking at the game through like a toilet bowl roll? So like he only sees it in a very narrow way. And then what he needs is, good things to happen so that his view, like is just going to get wider and wider. Right now, his vision is so narrow. I think it's like Martin Saint-Louis is so good at kind of like those analogies, right? So I think that's a perfect way to put it. Right now, like he's so like in this kind of like little bubble where, his view of the game, like his the way that he's perceiving the game is just really narrow. And hopefully as positive things happen, it just starts to open up for him, and it just kind of goes from there. So listen, like
it's
I'm
not
with
going to
you.
open up for him if everybody's trying to pick at it all the time, right? And that's kind of where I am with it.
Yeah, you have to trust that. Like again, like like if you have some people that would debate, is Martin Saint-Louis a good tactician? Is he going to be the right coach for Montreal when they're competing and all that? But nobody's going to argue that Martin Saint-Louis is not probably a premier coach in the NHL when it comes to player development and player, player kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? Like, getting them feeling good. Like he's a good vibes guy, right? Like he's right at the top of the. Yeah, he's a player's coach, and he's somebody that's going to help with people's professional and personal development, right? So, guys, we don't see everything that happens behind the scenes, and I'm sure they're working really closely with him. Even I think, I think we heard that recently where it was Martin Saint-Louis talking that they're even. I think Jeff Gordon was on Amazon talking about that as well too, about Dach. And so, listen, let the professionals do their thing. They're working with them. And listen, like are there times where I'd like to see a little bit more effort and skating there? Yes, but again, you don't know what's going on inside this guy's head, right? Like it's just so he's so confused at times because he's not really perceiving things the way that he normally would. So let him work through it. And again, this year's all about evaluation, like we've talked about, right? And being able to fight through that, Devin, is also part of the evaluation. Hockey is like 25% mental. It's physical. It's like 75% mental. So in a way, it's also important to see how it's part of the evaluation to see, does Dach, like, is he able to bring himself out of this? Like, look at Armia last year, right? Like, we gave him a lot of kudos for being able to seek help, and be able to kind of like build himself back up. That's like, we talk a lot about evaluating Dach as a hockey player, like his skills and his faceoffs and all that. That's also another part of it, right? Like, let's watch to see how he's able to mentally work on his game and build himself back up. That's another important part. If you're going to count on this guy to be a part of the core moving forward, there's going to be other times in the future where things go bad for him, right? So let's see how he builds that skill.
It's also about coaching and management as well, right? I feel like the Canadiens are at, I don't know if they're at a crossroads yet, but they're going to come to a crossroads eventually with this player. And right, like we've seen it with him before in Chicago, right? He struggled in Chicago, and they weren't able to bring him back from that sort of that psychological place where where they felt like he was never going to get back to being the kind of player that he was capable of being. And to me, obviously, part of that blame falls on the player for not being able to come back. But I think coaching and management plays a role in that as well, right? You have to put this guy in the right scenario, in the right circumstances to succeed. You have to give him the opportunity, and you have to help him and push him in the direction so that he can come back. And if they can't do that, whether it's him or whether it's coaching and man, if they can't come together and get him to the point where he can be a player that he's capable of being, then he's going to end up leaving Montreal much the same way he left Chicago. But if Marty St. Louis can bring something to the equation that the coaches in Chicago, I don't even know who the coaches in Chicago would have been then, but the coaching and the management in Chicago were when he ended up leaving there, then I think it's going to be a failure for everybody. And I agree with you. Marty St. Louis, that is his greatest strength, is helping young players develop, not just physically on the ice, but also mentally and emotionally and psychologically. And if Marty St. Louis can't sort of guide him through that, I don't know who actually will. But I think it's part of coaching, right? It's not just teaching kids systems and teaching kids how to skills and things like that. I think coaching at the highest level is also about giving kids what they need, players what they need, from a mental, psychological, emotional perspective, so that they can be good hockey players as well.
Awesome for Dach. For me, I will go with that direction. No choice. For the Montreal Canadiens, for Jake Evans, they have to resign him, because they don't have anybody yet to be ready for what Jake Evans brings to the Montreal Canadiens. Excellent PK, can play its fun role inside, versatile player, I believe, overall. So I think for Jake Evans, if they're losing Christian Dvorak, the line we don't know yet what happened with Kirby Dach. And you can talk about Owen Beck and Michael Edge or Oliver Kapanen. I think they don't have those kind of experience. And Jake Evans is only, 28 years old, turned in October, I believe. And that would give a little bit more the transition players for the Montreal Canadiens. I would not be afraid to give him a 3 or 4 years contract. And with $3 million, if the Montreal want to keep him around with the team. And I think that's what I'm looking for Jake Evans. We'll see now. I didn't hear about any update about his injury. I don't know, you guys.
No, it was a day off. Like Montreal, like everybody was off today, so I don't think it was pretty.
It was going to evaluation, but we don't get anything about what's going on with that injury. So
I found it interesting that nobody asked Marty St. Louis about it at the post-game press conference last night. So, I mean, obviously this is pure speculation on my part. It kind of makes me think that maybe it's not that bad, because if he wasn't around the dressing room after the game, I'm sure that somebody in the media would have asked Marty St. Louis about his status. But again, that's just pure speculation on my part.
They might have called somebody up today too, right? Like you might have seen Condada come up today or something like that. So not seeing a call up is actually pretty good news.
Yeah.
I agree. And
We'll
I
see.
agree with you as well, Coach,
We'll see.
about no choice but keeping him.
We'll see what happened with Jake Evans for sure. When we try, I just want to share in this. We have a lot of the things to talk about. We have almost half of the show, so I'm going to move on with other things. We talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Of course, the headline tonight. Let's see what we have. We're going to wrap up very quickly about the game between the Anaheim Ducks and the Montreal Canadiens yesterday. Honestly, Montreal won 3-2 on the shootout yesterday. And I'll just give you a little bit more information about the game. Power play goal for the Montreal Canadiens. And Josh Anderson have a good game. That first period, only 5 shots in the first 20 minutes. The OT boring for the Montreal Canadiens. 0 shots during that overtime. The two are well balanced. Honestly, everybody played over 10 minutes yesterday for the Montreal Canadiens as a forward. Defenseman was pretty good also, even whatever Hudson and Madison have a lot of minutes on the board. And Montembeault finished the night again for a save percentage on 931. And so that gave you a little bit an overview of what the stat gave to us, maybe missing a couple of things. But Marko, going to start with you. What do you think about the performance of Montreal Canadiens yesterday against the New York Islanders?
Or the Anaheim Ducks, yeah. So,
yeah, like Islanders, because I'm watching the game and definitely.
Yeah, all good. Coach, one thing we hear saying we talk about a lot is having honest self-evaluation, right? So I was really pleased to see that St. Louis had an honest auto-evaluation of the team's performance last night. The first period was definitely one of their worst in the stretch that we've seen. So to me, this is, good that St. Louis recognizes that. I didn't hear players talk about it that much. Some of the players, Montembeault talked about how he didn't like their first period. But listen, still some positive things in this game. Like obviously that, by the way, guys, like that Amazon broadcast, like that angle of Laine's one-timer.
Oh my God.
What an amazing broadcast. Yeah, so good. I hope that more of those games are on Amazon.
I don't know, Marko. You talk about this because I said this to you yesterday, right?
Just seeing that
you and that. So I do all the goal right for each month for the Montreal Canadiens, everything like that, and I go to the website and I look about the goal, everything like that. This is the first time it looked like you have a camera, a guy behind Patrick Laine.
Yeah.
Right there. I never see that. I don't know what this camera is coming from, Marko. It looked like the guy is in the sand.
I think it's in the boards. I think it might be in the boards. Yeah. It's pretty awesome. Yeah, it's really, really well done. Like that angle from his one-timer, like it's just brilliant, right? So overall, like, looking at these points, Coach, like power play goal, special teams were good. They did allow the one PK goal. But like to me, like watching Terry Ryan, like dangerous all night, like really, really good play for Anaheim, really impressive. That OT was pretty boring. Like Anaheim, Dvorak did lose the face-off, and I'm sure a lot of people were yelling at their TV when they see Dvorak come out, take the face-off, and then he loses it. And then Anaheim had a lot of the possession, and it was a lot of kind of circling back. I know the NHL has kind of had some debates about how to manage that in overtime. Apparently, at the Board of Governors, some of the GMs were talking about, or they're talking about maybe not allowing players to pass it back to the goaltender, and that might help the flow of the overtime a little bit. But listen, still a lot of positive things in this game, Coach. But again, I just hope that Montreal realizes that if you had this effort, like if you look at Anaheim's lineup, it didn't have Carlson, it didn't have Zegras, like so this is a pretty even game, and you could probably argue that Anaheim overall had a little bit of an edge in the game. So if they were to replicate this effort against Pittsburgh on Thursday, I don't unless Montembeault again stands on his head again, I don't anticipate, like, Montreal is going to need to play better. We talked about how important it is this week and next week for them to get some results here if they really want to stay in the mix. This effort is not going to be good enough. Like, we're all excited that Laine scored. It's great that Slafkovsky and Dach, got a point, and there's a nice tender moment of them, hugging after these are all fun things. But if you're looking at it just in a very analytical way, this was not the best effort for Montreal, and they're going to need to play better against Pittsburgh on Thursday if they want to have some success.
Devin.
Yeah. Pete's in the comments beat me to it, but Terry Ryan never looked that good when he played in the NHL.
Crazy.
You said Terry Ryan. You meant to say Troy Terry, but
Sorry, there you go.
yeah, Terry Ryan didn't have those kind of
Terry
skills,
Ryan's
but
totally different thing. Yeah.
totally different guy. I agree. I mean, I didn't have a very good feeling about that game. I mean, um, you know, not only did they play poorly in the first period, I thought the overtime was horrible. Like they played really badly in the overtime, and they probably deserved to lose in the overtime. But as Enter Tap pointed out on my show last night after the game, um, you know, sometimes you need to play badly and win, and that's what good teams do. I don't know that they're at that point. For me, overall, that game wasn't a positive, and you're right. If they play that way, they're going to lose more often than they're going to win in this league. But they got to win out of a bad performance. So hopefully that's a good thing. There are a couple of little things that I want to point out. You kind of both touched on some of the bigger things. That pass by Lane Hudson on the first goal, like that was like I don't like. I mean, you might not really notice it. You might just kind of like gloss over it. Like go back and look at it. The skill that was involved in that play to just keep the puck in the offensive zone in the first place, but then to just sort of almost one touch whip it across the ice right onto the stick of Nick Suzuki. That's like
Ice in
next
his
level,
vein. Total
like
ice in
next
his vein.
skill, audacity, all of it. Like to try it in the first place, but then to actually pull it off is just absolutely spectacular. The other thing I want to talk about too, and it sounds like you guys both watched the Amazon broadcast, but after the first period, Patrick Laine was interviewed, and he basically didn't hold back anything. That was I think he used the word atrocious. The period was really, and I think what it said to me was, the leadership on this Canadiens team for the most part is sort of quiet leadership, right? Mike Matheson's a pretty quiet leader. Nick Suzuki's a pretty quiet leader. You don't really see Brendan Gallagher out there, and it struck me that they might have, in addition to Laine obviously being productive and obviously the moral boost that he gives, I think they might have a leader in the room now who is going to be a little bit more vocal, and a guy who, not a guy who's going to go in there and scream and yell at guys, but a guy who's going to, tell it like it is. And I like that. I thought it was refreshing to hear a guy who was, not going to pull any punches. And I just imagined what he might have said to. And again, I don't think he's going in there calling other teammates out, but he's also not going in there and pretending like, oh, we're only down. We're what were they 1-1 after the first period yesterday?
Yeah.
I think it was 1. We're 1-1. Let's keep it going. Like he was like, guys, it's not good enough. We need to be better than that. This is a team that we should be better than. And that kind of struck me about Laine. Obviously, on the ice, his performance has been, as good as we could have expected. But if he's bringing that aspect of the game as well, I think it's a really positive thing for the team.
Yeah. One other thing, guys, before we move on to this, one other thing that we've heard saying we talk about a lot is Montreal floor, right? So he talks a lot about how our ceiling is very good, like our ceiling is very good, but our floor needs to get higher. So maybe that's what we're seeing last night, right? Is maybe the floor, which is okay, they didn't play a very good game, but that floor of them not playing a good game but still being in a game is much better than the floor we saw, say, against Seattle, where they lost 8-3 or whatever, right? So maybe that's a really another positive takeaway from it, is that if this is Montreal's floor, like them not having a good period but still finding a way to win, that is also very good news, because that's how you become a consistent team in the NHL, right? Is, like you said, finding ways to win. And that means having your floor still being in a place where you're in a game, right? So I think that's really positive.
I said the exact same thing on my show last night. I said, from my perspective, that game was a bit of a step backwards, but that it was really nice to be talking about a step backwards after a 3-2 overtime victory than it was after, talking about a step backwards after an 8-2 loss to Seattle or a 7-3 loss to the New York Rangers. It certainly was a lot better to be talking about that.
Awesome. We do like we do usually, Marco. We go with the stood out, obscure, and out of office.
And this is just for last game, Coach.
I'm sorry.
This is
Last
just for
game.
last game.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think it's hard not to go with Patrick Laine for stood out. Geez, like just that shot, and guys, like just overall, like to me, it's just I'm astonished about his overall play. Like people we're talking about how we weren't expecting his cardio to be there and everything else, but man, I'm not seeing like it being looking that bad on the ice, Coach. Like he is like on the right side of the puck, like he's back checking, he's like killing plays, like he's doing all the subtle things. Like really, really impressed with his game overall. So to me, he absolutely stood out. There's some other good candidates there too, but it's he to me, he's like the story right coming out of that game for sure. Obscure, like okay, that's a tough one. I didn't really think about that. We tend to always kind of like focus on the same guys, right? It's either Anderson or Evans, that are obscure. That's a tough one because again, I think, yeah, like I'd like to think of somebody different, right? But I guess I'll say like Dvorak, because it's somebody that we don't talk about a lot. Like again, like PK was decent. That Anderson line was okay. I think he was the only player I think that was over 50% in faceoffs. But again, like that's not my best choice. To me, it's the obscure hero is always Evans. Like, I think I could answer Evans almost every game for that thing. In the office, to me, it's Barron again. Unfortunately, like Devin, you were talking about that goal where everybody was shitting all over Dach for having that pass. Like again, ill-advised pass, like a little of a blind pass into the slot. But to me, that first goal is really Barron. And they talked about it on the broadcast too. It's Barron just basically wasn't aggressive enough, allowing that entry into that zone. And just overall, like I just find that he's like the thing that we like about Barron is his ability to move the puck and creating things offensively. Right now, I think similar to Dach, right? Like the confidence is just not there right now to carry the puck. So not only is he not doing what we want him to do physically, like winning battles, making positive reads and winning battles like in his zone, but we're not seeing him like rush the puck like he used to last year as well and jumping in on the play. So I would bring him into the office just to say, listen, man, like play your game. Like you're here for the things that make you strong. Yes, we've talked to you about, being stronger in those one-on-one battles, clearing the net and all those things. But you need to also do what got you here, which is skate the puck in, join the rush, pick your times, obviously. But, more and more, Coach, like we just have less and less of a need for a guy like that because Hudson is just over delivering in that department, right? So I would bring Mr. Barron into the office and just tell him to get back to his game.
Devin.
I guess I'll go backwards. I'm going to start with at the office. At the office, I mean, I think I have a hard time disagreeing with Marko. I think Barron was the worst player on the team last night. I commented to a few people that Barron just isn't an adequate replacement for Jaden Struble anymore. Right? Jaden Struble has surpassed him to the degree where, I get that they have to play Justin Barron because, they can't just put him in the press box for a month like they've done to Pizzetta, because I think they do have some intention to try and deal him. And obviously his trade value kind of goes through the toilet or through the floor if they just kind of, bury him in the press box. But, if he and Struble were both sort of, battling for that sixth defense position and they were both kind of on an equal level, it would be a lot easier to sort of swallow. But, he just isn't there. And I've told you, I love Justin Barron. Halifax Mooseheads, right? I watched him play junior hockey. I would love for that kid to do well. He's from Halifax. I saw him play junior hockey. And I know that he has a ton of skill and he has a bunch of natural raw talent. You said his skating, his shot. But when he is on the ice, the breakout just breaks down. Like it's not there. And I'm waiting for him to just like for the switch to click, and it's just not happening. He's getting opportunities, he's not taking advantage of them. Obscure, Entertap kind of stole my thunder a little bit in the comments, but obscure for me was Kirby Dach. I thought he had a really good game yesterday. I know,
I
we're
disagree.
at the
I
point.
disagree. I disagree.
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought, and Marty St. Louis thought he had a really good game, and I thought he had a really good game. I think we're watching every time he gets the puck now. We're watching for him to do something that breaks him out of his slump. And when it doesn't work, and when it doesn't happen, or he makes a pass that gets intercepted, it gets magnified 100 times.
He had a
You
couple good
know,
zone entries, right? Like a couple of those zone entries were pretty slick. That's one thing I saw. Like, yeah,
Yeah, and I thought he was playing off line A and playing off Slavkovsky well. Obviously, he had some passes that got intercepted, but I don't think there was a player on the team last night that didn't have, a couple bad passes or a couple bad moments. But with him, it just gets blown up. And I thought he played well. I thought it was a step in the right direction for him. Is he back to where he needs to be, or where we would like him to be, or whatever? Absolutely not. I'm not saying that for a minute, but obscure performers. I mean, you could give it. I mean, Gallagher, I think, had a really great game yesterday as well. Be a very, as did Josh Anderson. So, but again, I feel like I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I thought he played a solid game last night, and I give my obscure pick to Kirby Dach. For stood out, I mean, obviously, an obvious choice would be line A. Another obvious choice, I think, would probably be Sam Montembeault. Montembeault kept them in the game in the first period. He kept them in the game in the overtime, and sort of in the last 5 minutes or so of the third period, there were a number of opportunities where Anaheim could have definitely made things a little less happy for that game. But Montembeault definitely, I think, Coach, you put up 931 percentage for the game. That's pretty impressive, and that's a few games in a row now. It's under the pressure of having been named as the Four Nations goaltender for Canada, or one of the Four Nations goaltenders, and he's played really well. I guess I'll go. I mean, there's lots of guys who could get that, but I'll go with Montembeault. And I also love his post game interviews because he talks. I've never heard anybody talk so fast in my entire life.
cocaine is a hell of a drug, even though we know it's not true. But like, it seems like that way. Like, he talks so fast.
There was I can't remember who did. It sounded like Michael Farber, but I don't think it was Michael Farber. Was asking him a question after a practice one time, and he said, like, do you think that fast? Do you think as fast in your head as you speak with your mouth? And he kind of laughed. He's like, I never really realized that I spoke that fast until I made it to the NHL and people started to interview me, like when I was younger, and nobody really cared how I spoke. But he does talk a mile a minute.
Yeah. Imagine the conversation between him and RHP. Like, RHP talks really loud. Like, he has the loudest voice. Yeah. Like, he does not have like an inside voice at all. That would be a very interesting conversation to overhear.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll go with Josh Anderson for me. I think Josh Anderson, it was the one to make all the big impact of this game, to switch the momentum by his physicality, his forechecking. It changed completely what the Montreal, because honestly, Montreal have no shot for the last 1 minute of remaining on the first period. But Anderson brings some energy like Montreal does not have this year. And to see that from Anderson, I think this is a great, for me, for the Montreal Canadiens yesterday. Yeah, you can talk about Montembeault. I think Montembeault for me was really the easy target for that stood out, because the only way we get point yesterday is all because of Montembeault. Honestly, if not his big save, but we're not going to win that game, and that's what we're looking for, right? For the goaltender, and make the big save at the right time, and to keep the team in the game. And then sometimes, Marko, like Martin, like Devin too, you win games sometimes you don't deserve it. Sometimes you lose game when you should win those games. So last night there was a game like Montreal does not deserve to have that game, and I was more over the Montreal Canadiens. My absolute players, this is going to be not easy to go. On that one, because you can have its fun players for the Montreal Canadiens. But I think I'm going with Mike Madison. I think Mike Madison have a good game on the PK. We know we expect him to play too many minutes, everything like that, but sometimes you have to look about what he accomplished. Yesterday, I think at least 2 times he saved at least good opportunity against the Anaheim Ducks, and didn't have a really bad game overall. Did not turn around the puck a lot, and we see my. I don't know if it could be round about this. I don't know if you agree with or not, Marco, but I see Mike Madison less mistake because he does not play on the power play number one. And I don't know that's helping his game
Yeah,
overall.
I think absolutely. Like, I think everybody agrees, right? Like, they needed to, until the emergence of Hudson this year, we all agreed that he had to play less minutes somehow to be effective. And it's not a cardio thing. I think it's just a mental bandwidth thing. Like, it's a mental exhaustion thing. We know his cardio is amazing and his skating is amazing, right? But so it just went the other way. We all thought, okay, well, let's take him off the PK because he was running the first power play unit. But it worked out the other way. So now we have Hudson on the first unit power play, and Hudson is definitely serviceable. Toronto just won in overtime. Wow, what a steal by Stolars! Holy cow, huge game for Toronto. But yeah, huge by him, coach, to do that. So yeah, interesting.
Now I'm going to surprise you for my other office, and it's not because the player is not like a bad player. He does not like, but I feel for me, Kenan Coley had a really bad game yesterday again. Overall.
Playing with Barron
He
though,
does not
playing with
play at the
Barron.
level we expect. That's maybe the one I said that at the office. So maybe to sit with him, say, look, we came back from an injury again, and the last game was not good. Also Saturday, by the way. So
Playing with Barron though, coach. Playing with
I'm sorry
Justin
again,
Barron. That's why,
but
because he's
Barron,
playing with Justin
listen,
Barron.
Barron, it's another play like we don't expect Barron to play higher like we does. Like
Why is he
what
playing with
kind of
Dooley?
mistake he did Barron after the first shift yesterday?
Well, so again, on the first goal, right? So he didn't kill the play. Like, he didn't play that entry well enough, like, in my opinion.
Oh
And
no, the
then what?
first goal, guys, is Gaden Cooley right away in
No,
front of the net. And front of the net
no.
is Gaden Cooley.
Go
Yeah,
back.
first of all,
Go
Kirby
back.
Dach gave a pass straight with nobody there. That's the reason I disagree with Devin about Kirby Dach. This is a major key problem for Kirby Dach and the rest of the player. If you want to piss Martin St. Louis, if you want to put him mad, this is the kind of mistake you make in NHL. He did with Sarkowski earlier during the season. He knows it's not acceptable. After that,
You forget.
the play turn around, right? You have a Barron that kept control, but after that, everything collapsed with a player with Dax coming back on the fourth checking. Sarkowski loses men, and Kirby Dach does not protect the guy in front of the net. So you
But
have
yeah,
all
like,
together.
listen, you're a little more forgiving of a turnover in the offensive zone. Again, you're right. Like, having those, like, no look passes into the slot turn into a break. You know, Martin Saint we talked about all the time, right? Like, feeding the other team's offense. Like, that you don't want to do that. The
What you
most
said, Martin, Marco, you talk about we shoot ourselves. What you have an expression now. We kill. Now we have an expression about something
Do
when
things to
you
help
make a
the other.
mistake for yourself.
help, yeah, like,
We're
like,
doing things that help the other team.
yeah, feed the other team's offense. But then he also talked about puking all over themselves. Like, they talked
No, it's
about
about
that.
vomit. It's about
Yeah, well, yeah, puked all over. We puked all over ourselves. I think. Yeah,
But,
yeah.
but that
So
play, but that pass that turnover by Kirby Dach in the offensive zone, that happened. There were a
no,
half a
no,
dozen
no,
other
no,
players
no,
that
no. I
expected.
disagree. I disagree
Absolutely.
because Marco he always said, yeah, 4 options when you have a puck. It's 4 players. Now you have a chance right now to rim the puck around the board, bring back the puck to the D, and reset the play right there. Now he used a pass with not knowing, not looking, someone was there. This is
It happened.
not acceptable for Martin Saint Louis
I,
all year long. All year
I
but
long.
made
it's
a
not.
big deal of it because I was upset with the degree to which RDS announcers blamed Kirby Dach for that goal, and I was watching for those plays for the rest of the game, and I can tell you that there were at least 5 other examples of turnovers in the offensive zone by other players other than Kirby Dach. Not exactly the same, but where they made passes that were soft passes that got intercepted by the other team. But of course, they didn't result in a goal. And it happened, and again, it wasn't a great pass. And in a perfect world, Kirby Dach doesn't do that. But again, we've already pointed out that there was an issue with what Justin Barron did on that play. There was an issue with what Caden Gooley did on that play. I think you could also argue that Sam Montembeault gave up a huge rebound on not a very difficult shot and got himself very out of position.
That first save was hard, man. That was a good first save, Devin, that he made on that shot.
Well, it's a good save, but it's a huge rebound right to the hash mark, and he's sliding into the corner. And again, I'm not blaming him for it. What I'm saying is there's 4 or 5 other things that Slavkovsky, you could argue, wasn't that he lost his guy on the back check coming back as well. Yeah. So there's 4 or 5 guys on that play who have some level of responsibility on that goal, and to focus in on Kirby Dach because of a pass he made 200 feet away, and RDS talked about that for 10 minutes.
Yeah,
they show replays of it.
It's so funny. It's so funny on perspective because on the Amazon broadcast, they focused almost exclusively on Barron not allowing that entry and that whole. So there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Coach, I agree with you. Those kinds of turnovers, St. Louis is not going to like them, but I would classify turnovers in the offensive zone like that. They're serious, but they're not as serious as turnovers at your own blue line, either the defensive blue line or the offensive blue line. Those are the you see Slav right now. I don't know what he's doing, but he keeps when he's trying to chip out pucks, when the defenseman rings it along the boards, and he has this really bad habit right now of just wanting to do a quick, easy chip to the center. And somebody kind of breaks out, but he keeps turning it over right in the middle of the ice. Those are the turnovers that any coach is going to hate at your own defensive blue line or at the offensive blue line.
The one that Dach had a few games ago, I can't remember, where he was coming out, he gets the puck along the boards, he's coming across the blue line, and he throws a blind pass to the middle of the ice. Right, that is far more egregious. As a player, mentally, you have to know that you've got to protect that puck. Whereas, when you're behind the other team's net, maybe you take a few more chances and get creative. And there was a player in that spot where he passed that puck, right? 2 seconds or, a second before that, there was a player where he passed that puck. It wasn't like he passed to a place where there was never anybody there. He had a teammate in that spot who had just left that spot. And so anyways, I think I agree with you completely, Marko, that a turnover in the offensive zone is a lot different than one in the defensive end.
Here we go. Mézard back in the lineup for the Laval Rocket. When I said lineup at the practice wearing the yellow jersey, so he is a player with no contact. Today was 2 players was not there. One is Arsenault, sick for Arsenault. And then we have Alex Barry-Boulet. They're not there for personal reason. Toronto Maple Leafs come back to score 2 goals and beat the New Jersey Devils by a score 2-1 in overtime tonight for the
Stolars.
Toronto Maple Leafs. People are disagreeing. I'm going to predict this right now. This is going to be a great year for the Toronto Maple Leafs. This is the year I believe Toronto is going to have a better playoff and a great year. The reason behind that is because the goal against Marko. And that's the big difference between
Bigger has definitely got him playing the right way. It's just need just a little bit more depth scoring, But they are looking really good. Their goals against are down.
Jake Evan, we don't know the update, but if he get hurt for day, week, or month, that should complete the trade deadline for the Montreal Canadiens. But I'm not going to talk about the trade deadline. I'm going to talk about who you call up for the Laval Rocket. If Devin, you ask that question, who do you think the Montreal are going to call up? Alex Barry-Boulet, Joshua Roy?
No, neither of them.
Lucas Condotta?
Jared Davidson.
He doesn't play center, though.
Yeah.
He's listed as a center winger.
He play winger.
He hasn't played center this year?
I'm sorry?
No.
He's listed as a center winger. I mean, I'm not bringing up Owen Beck is the main point I guess I'm trying to make. I'm not bringing up Owen Beck. I don't think it makes any sense to bring him up at this point. I think he needs to stay in a routine, and I think he needs to stay in Laval for the entire year. And I think that's what the Canadiens have planned for him. I mean, again, I was of the view that Davidson could play some center, and I thought it would be nice to reward him for what's been a pretty good little bit of hockey he's been playing lately. If he's not going to work, then I think you're probably looking at. I would bring Kandata back. I mean, Kandata not only did well when he was here before, but he can. I don't know, I'm not going to suggest that he's as good as Jake Evans, but he can play a similar role. Having him on the fourth line center, he's obviously not going to do the things that Jake Evans does, but he's also not going to hurt you. So if you're not going to let me have Jared Davidson, I'll go with Lucas Kandata.
I agree, man, 100%. Although it's not, I wouldn't be against bringing Beck up for a couple games this year. I think it would be nice to have him just to give him a taste again. Like I know he had a couple games, I think, or 1 or 2 games last year when they called him up as an emergency from junior. But I think it would be nice to give him a couple games, kind of like Mayu. But I wouldn't bring him up at this time of the year. I'm with you. I would bring Kandata for now.
Yeah, like I agree with you. Like, and give back that sort of that cookie for having a good year. And the only issue with that, I thought the exact same thing. The only issue with that would be that if Laval is in a playoff run, you might not want to take him.
Yeah, you can find a way to stay. That's the beauty of them being so close, right? You find a way to sneak them in for a game, and then Laval plays like back to back over the weekend or something. If they're in a tight race, though, then yeah, it's tight. It's tough.
It's everybody is right about that. A2 add more, so I agree with A2 too. So you guys, you're right about this. Condola should be the good players right there. Beck, let him play a 10 minutes. And now, if Condola is out, Juniak is out anyway. That will give more responsibility for Beck. And secondly, if Mézard is ready very soon, Mézard can play center, so he can move back as a center number 1 example. Mézard number 2, I can go at Dauphin. So I think that will be a help the Laval market in that direction. So the next thing I'm going to talk about the subject of the night. And the subject of the night, guys, is imagine Michkov, Deminov, and Laney with the Montreal Canadiens. If this could happen, imagine it would be the look like honestly the lineup or the roster on Montreal Canadiens. And what do you think if it's happened? Are you, of course, I will create a why Montreal does not draft or Michkov. Rumors said Michkov doesn't want to play Montreal. Others said he did not say that. He have a big interview from Russia was out yesterday, I believe. It's happened before the NHL draft. And Mishkov said, I will go with the team. They will select me. I'm not worried. And everything changed after that. So he has different ways to say that. But again, he has 16 make a mistake. It's all until the Flyers pick Mishkov. Mishkov, again, 2 more points tonight. Mishkov dominate. Have a better year so far over Bedard and last season. And imagine Mishkov. Now, we can said why the Montreal did not pick up them. We can blame anything, but Marko and Devin, I will also go a little bit there. If they get Mishkov, is it the roster change? Is it Patrick Laine cannot come anymore here? Is it Montreal does not draft Demidov? So I want to give you a couple of scenarios. What you think about that? About this? Is it a mistake or not a mistake for Montreal Canadiens about Mishkov? And we're going to get that conversation about this. Las Kings guys beat the Islanders 3-1 and net by Mickey Anderson. The Kings, it's a team nobody talk about this year. When I said as a surprise, I think we have to put there like the Winnipeg Jet. I wasn't expecting the King to be so good this year because of the goaltender situation and the fact they lost through Doddy, Marko. They are really impressive so far. So I'm going to talk about the Kings later, but I just want to show to you what's happening over there.
I hate this topic, so I'll let you go first, Devin.
Yeah,
I want your comments, Marko.
I'll let Devin go first.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the idea of having a line of Michkov, Demidov, and Line A is an attractive one. I mean, yeah, that would be amazing to watch. But I will add to all of the other issues. I mean, you know, we also forget that whether we can agree that Michkov, whether he wanted to come to Montreal or not. I mean, who really cares? But you also forget that he was on a 3-year contract at the time, right? Like Philadelphia did whatever they did to get him to come, but at the time of the draft, the Canadiens were facing a guy who wasn't going to be coming for 3 years, right? Whether the Canadiens could have pulled off what Philadelphia did to get him to come earlier, is a whole different story. So, that's another aspect of this to keep in mind too. And the other thing is that the Canadiens, if you've noticed, have been very heavily focused on bringing in guys who fit their philosophy, right? They're bringing in players who, have the mindset of the type, Michael Hage, Jacob Fowler, Ivan Demidov, Rybacker. These are all guys who have a certain, a certain personality, a certain, personality traits that they wanted. So, from that perspective, I'm perfectly happy with David Reinbacher. So again, if the question is, did Montreal make a mistake? I think the answer is no. In retrospect, in 10 years from now, and, are we going to say that Michkov production-wise, might have been the better option? Who knows? We haven't seen Reinbacher play a single game yet. Would it be fun and exciting to watch Michkov, Demidov, and Line play together? Yeah, I think that would be fun to watch. Those guys are obviously 3 spectacularly talented hockey players. But again, for what the Canadiens are building, right? They're in a rebuild. They have a philosophy. They have a plan in place. I just don't think that Michkov fit into that plan. And again, just to briefly touch on Reinbacher, everybody likes to think that last year was a terrible year for Reinbacher and a step in the wrong direction for him. But I don't know that it was. I think he played as a leader, as a 19-year-old kid. He was a leader on a really, really, really bad hockey team, and he got to, being a leader at that age on a bad hockey team. That's good experience, right? And I think he probably learned a lot from that. He learned how to deal with adversity. He learned how to deal with, there were a lot of guys on that team that didn't carry their own weight. I think the leading scorer on the team had 27 points in 55 games or something like that. So I think that in the long run will turn out to be a positive experience for Reinbacher. And again, it remains to be seen what he turns into at the NHL level. But I'm very satisfied with the decision to take Reinbacher over Michkov. That's not to say that it'll turn out to be the decision that in 10 years from now look at their careers. I don't know that there's a guarantee that Michkov will have a better career or Reinbacher will have a better career. But at the end of the day, the decision that was facing the Canadiens at the time, I've got no issue with the decision that they made. And I mean, we can all look at it in retrospect and have 20/20 vision and say, oh, well, look what Michkov's doing now. But that's not the way the world works. So I mean, first of all, time will tell. Second of all, I don't think we can go back and second guess the decision that was, in front of Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton and their scouting staff at the time it was made.
Yeah. So before I jump into Michkov, so one thing I'll say about Reinbacher, so his time with Cloton, I almost kind of throw it in the garbage. Like the real sample that I look at is his last games that he played with Laval, right? To me, that put me completely at ease, like how well he played in Laval, like towards the end of the season. And my hot take on Reinbacher, Devin, you weren't with us at the beginning of the season. I honestly think, like, I know it wasn't trending that way when he got hurt. If Reinbacher wouldn't have got hurt, I wouldn't be surprised if he was playing with Hudson with the Montreal Canadiens right now as we speak. He
I
might have
don't think
started
so,
this season.
Marko, but I like the way you bring that because you have a good training camp.
Yeah, he was on because
Yeah,
again,
no,
like
I agree with you. I don't think so they would bring him there, but I agree with
I
you.
I don't know. Like I think he might have went back down to start, and then I think he would have played his way back up because everybody was all goo over Mayu at the training camp and everything else. But I was like, remember, Coach, my headlines during it was always slow and steady wins the race. Everybody was Reinbacher. He's not flashy and all that. I'm like, yeah, but slow and steady. Martin Saint Louis is going to want somebody who knows exactly what he's going to give him. Anyways, we'll see how it works out with Reinbacher. But for your question about Michkov, Demidov, and Laine, I do not buy zero into the thing where Montreal didn't select him because of the contract or because they thought he didn't want to come here. I think somebody has been on the record saying that the reason they didn't take Michkov is that they felt they already had a similar player in Cole Caulfield, right? So what your question is a little bit misleading, Coach, is you're not including Caulfield in this, right? Having Michkov, Demidov, and Caulfield, it's too much of kind of the same player, like I think it wasn't the right mix. Now, you can argue that Michkov might end up being the best out of all three of these players, Michkov, Demidov, and Caulfield. It's not impossible. But based on the fact that they already had Caulfield, we've heard Bobroff talk about how when they were scouting Michkov, in the back of their mind, they were already hoping to draft Demidov the year after. So
yeah, but you cannot go that way. This is going to be a big mistake if they stop thinking that way.
That's what they had, and that's what they were thinking.
Well, they said that because they picked them up. They did not talk about this before that. If the project Marko is like right now, they are thinking, oh, we're going to draft Lindsay Dupont and McKenna in 2026. Now we're going to draft this year Logan Ensler because we're thinking we draft, and that's for me. This I don't believe that at all, because if you do that, that's a big mistake.
Okay, all I'm saying is that, so here's another way to look at it, guys. So I see Nicholas saying drafting by need. Of course, Montreal, I think the biggest thing for drafting Reinbacher, Coach, and this is a trend that you're seeing more in the NHL, is they were looking at the value of the pick. So, I think organizations at this point, they have kind of like a graph of, okay, so what is the value of the pick? So they're looking, okay, a scoring winger in Michkov, even though he might end up being an elite winger, we value a huge, smooth skating, right-handed defenseman, and we love his character and all that. We feel that the value is higher at number 5 than Demidov, right? And then, they talked about Slavkovsky, same thing with Slavkovsky. They looked at Slavkovsky and they're like, the value, he's a unicorn. You don't get guys like that. And so they have their calculations that they do. And another way to look at it is, okay, so if you didn't pick if you didn't pick Reinbacher, then okay, so you pick Michkov, and this year they probably would have picked a defenseman, right? So would you rather have Michkov and say Dickinson or Perek or whatever defenseman that was in this year's draft versus Demidov and Reinbacher? That's another way to look at it too, right? I don't think we're further behind having Demidov and Reinbacher versus having Michkov and Perek, or
the reality is there would have been next to no chance that they would have drafted Michkov and Demidov. If they drafted Michkov the year before, they almost certainly wouldn't have drafted. I mean, obviously they were in love with Demidov, from all indications, but beyond that, I mean, the idea is it's almost, you're bringing up a really good point. The question isn't whether it's Michkov and Demidov, it's whether it's Michkov and whatever defenseman they would have drafted this year, Demidov, right?
Yeah. So to me, I look at the end result of these two drafts being Demidov and Reinbacher is equally as good potentially. Again, we've seen Michkov. One thing I feel bad about, Coach, is no matter what happens, I feel terrible for Reinbacher because it's going to be impossible for him to eclipse what Michkov does. It's just impossible. From a fan perspective, you can't compare what Michkov is going to be in the NHL, being an electric offensive player and a stable two-way, stay-at-home defenseman that wins you championships. The average fan is not going to value that the same way. So it's always going to be a losing battle for Reinbacher in the public eye. And for that, I feel terrible for the kid. And we already saw what he went through that summer after the draft. That's unfortunately not going to go away for a while because we know Michkov is going to be good. So for me, people that look at this right now and imagine how good Montreal could be having Michkov in their lineup right now, to me, it's very short-sighted. Of course, would Montreal on December 12th, 2024 be a better team with Michkov if they would have drafted Michkov instead of Reinbacher? Yes, because Reinbacher is injured. But one of
No,
my
but
favorite,
change the question. Put this one out. Michka in the lineup tonight with the Montreal
yeah,
Canadiens in the beginning of the season. Do you think Montreal have the same stat or same understanding?
well, that's what I'm telling you, coach. Like you're saying exactly what I'm saying.
No, because
Looking
you
at
talk about Rebecca. Don't talk about Rebecca. My point is like if they have Michka right now and the team,
yeah,
do you think Montreal have a better team, a better
well, that's what I'm saying. That's
record?
a very short-sighted way to look at it, right? So
That's not
people
what
are looking
Montreal's
at it,
trying to do right now. Montreal
yeah,
is
like
rebuilding right now. They're not worried. They're not worried about being a better team on December 12th, 2024. They're not worried about having Michkov in their lineup and being, a borderline playoff team in 2024. What they want to be is they want to be a Stanley Cup contender in 2026 or 2027 with David Reinbacher being a top pairing defenseman, a shutdown defender, and
playing
Demi
with,
Dov playing
yeah,
with Demi Dov and Line A and Caulfield and Suzuki and those guys. Like they're not playing. They're not building to be a team that's good right now. They're building to be a team that's going to be good in 3 years from now. And having a solid defensive core, whether it's defensive defenseman or offensive defenseman, is going to be just as important to that goal, if not more so, than having another flashy forward in your top six.
and coach, like you were very like this, right? Like how many teams have won the Stanley Cup with like if they had Michkov and Caulfield, because again, Demidov is over 6 feet, right? And I know how I feel about like an inch difference, right? If somebody's 5'11" and weighs 195 and is strong, I don't care. Like to me, it's the same thing as a 6 foot guy who's like 185, right? But Michkov is a smaller player, right? So you already have Suzuki that's under 6 feet. Now he's like a brick, like brick shithouse, right? Like he's built pretty thick. But you got Caulfield. You already have, if you have Michkov there in your top six, that's going to be problematic, right? So I think that's the main reason
That's why I disagree with you about that. Because I believe in the past 10, I did the homework, right? You have two teams. The Tampa Bay Lightning, when they win the Stanley Cup with Yannick Gord, Brennan Point, and they have another one. They have three players under 6 foot when they win as a forward. No, they have five
Yanni
of
Gord
them.
wasn't in your top six though. Yanni Gord was not in
They
your.
have five of them. There was two of them was at the top six. It was Brennan Point and someone else. Can't remember. Anyway, my point behind that, the hockey is changing. The playoff is changing. And the next 5, 10 years, you're going to have top six player under 6 foot because the hockey playoff is not like it was before that. And I think that's the
I don't know.
reason I'm not worried about Caulfield and Michkov and the same top six with the Montreal Canadiens as on the playoff. For
I'm
me,
not. I'm not.
Marco, I will go that direction. The way you talk
I'm not
about
worried
this
about
or the
the
way we look about this is this way. Are we draft the best player, the most talented on the board, or we place the player because we have we missing a piece of the puzzle for a long term?
Value. It's they did, like I said. I think the way Montreal drafted, it's not just simply for need. They looked at value of the pick. What was the best value pick?
So they
And then,
consider the value of Rebecca better than Michkov
Yes.
a long
scoring
term.
winger, a
Whoa!
scoring
So
winger
you talk about
versus
a player going to bring 100 points a long term, and they skip that player to get maybe a defenseman it could be maybe not a top defenseman in NHL. Like if you compare
coach,
Mishkov, you have to be Ray Barker
they're not
become the
building-
top best defenseman in NHL, one of the
No.
top 20.
No way.
If
Coach,
you don't get
again,
there, it's a big mistake because you
And you
get
don't
the
know how
most
teams-
talented players. So if you're telling me right now, we go to the draft, you have Matthew Scheffer, you have Jimmy Higgins, the two best defense players in the draft. Montreal Canadiens also have three other players, Paul Martin, Frondel, whatever it is. Now you go tell me they're going to look about the position of the long term versus the value of that player versus Jimmy Higgins or James Higgins and Matthew Scheffer.
I think
they're not picking
every
number one, they're picking number 5, first of all.
number 5. Yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying, coach, is that, and you can debate on whether they properly evaluated Reinbacher as a top pairing right-handed defenseman. We'll see if they were right. But what I'm saying is that they evaluated Reinbacher as a top pairing right-handed defenseman, 6'4", skates like the wind, all that. And not just Montreal, most teams, in my opinion, the currency of an asset, they would look at a top pairing right-handed big defenseman that can skate would be valued higher than an elite scoring winger. No question.
So
I don't think that's not
here's
revolutionary.
a scenario. Here's a scenario for you, Coach. If in 5 years from now, David Reinbacher is Shea Theodore, and he's the first pairing defenseman with the Montreal Canadiens, and Lane Hudson is Adam Fox, and those two guys are your top pairing defensemen. Would you rather have that, or would you rather have Michkov, Demidov, and Laine?
Michkov tomorrow morning and Demidov. I will tell you the reason. The Montreal Canadiens, the last 4 games.
That's not going to win you the Stanley Cup.
The last 4 games, right? We have a Patrick Laine. What's his friend for the Montreal Canadiens right now? For the first time in the many years, they have a talented players. They have a sniper. They have someone is different. Yeah, it's another level like nobody have in Montreal Canadiens. You can compare Cole Caulfield, Nick Suzuki, Laine. It's another level. And that's what we don't have. That you can see the difference right there. You can see right now with
Demidov.
I'm sorry.
His name is Demidov. Yeah, we do have a guy like that. His name is Demidov.
Demidov is not there.
His name is Cole Caulfield.
Coach,
Demidov is not there right now. It's not guaranteed Demidov is going to be that Patrick Laine. My point behind that is you can see if you don't have no talent, you can have go around with Suzuki, Caulfield, everything like that, but you don't have another level of talent, and the lineup is not going to work. So
Shea Theodore
what I listen all of you tonight, you're telling me right now, you believe the value of Reinbacher of the Montreal Canadiens organization thinking at the long term it would be better at Michkov.
Yes.
At long term.
What I'm saying specifically
and for me, that's what I'm a little bit concerned about that. Because I think it's if you don't see the value of Michkov or you don't see they pick Demidov. This is still a number 5. And the next 5 years, I believe it's going to be the second or the top best 3 pick in that draft.
We have to be careful about confusing talent with production. Right? Shea Theodore is a talented hockey player. Right? Just because he's not flashy and he doesn't score goals and he doesn't play that side of the game, it's a different talent. It's a different skill, but these are skills and talents nonetheless. Like Chris Pronger was a talented hockey player. Shea Weber was. I mean, Shea Weber is not a great example, but I'm thinking of great defensive defensemen. Right? These are talents. They're just different talents, and so we often get caught up in equating offensive production with talent. There's different talents, and if David Reinbacher can become I'm trying to Shea Weber might not have been a great example, but if he becomes a top level defensive defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens, a clear first pairing all-star defenseman.
Devin, here's a good comp for Reinbacher, right? So his floor to me is Adam Larson. Adam Larson is kind of his floor, right? Yeah. In my opinion. And his ceiling is like a Morris Seider, right? So let's say he's a Morris Seider, right-handed shot defenseman. If he's at that level, I would be curious. And again, Coach, this is not unusual. This is not just the Montreal Canadiens that value draft picks this way, right? Like it's usually center. Right-handed defenseman is like right after center in terms of value. Now, it's how you evaluate that player. Like if they pick Sandin Pellikka, number 5, then okay, yeah, he's a right-handed defenseman, but he's not in the same tier of pick, right? But a lot of people had Reinbacher. Again, how many teams were trying to trade up and take Montreal's pick because they wanted to pick Reinbacher? Montreal's not the only team that had him valued right there. So
yeah, it's not like they went off the board to get him. Like they didn't. No. This isn't. This isn't them sort of picking a guy that nobody else was on board with. Like he was consensus, 4-8, 4-7 guy?
Yeah.
Linebacker? Yeah.
These questions, coach, like one of my,
But
I'm not a big,
imagine that. My point behind that is like imagine Michkov, Dimitrov, Lenny in the lineup for the Montreal Canadiens, the
I don't like
talent they
it. I
have.
wouldn't, I don't think it would be so. Like it's all about roster. You need a mix of types of players, coach. Like you've said it yourself, right? Like Montreal is going to need different ingredients in their top six. Like you can't just have high end talent players. Like they're going to need to have a mix of players. To me, to have Michkov, Demidov, Caulfield, Suzuki in your top six, I don't know if that's the right mix. Like, I would it like would they score a lot of points? Maybe, but overall, we've talked about this. Like the biggest job for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gordon now is going to be to take all the assets that they've collected and build the right, like put the puzzle together, right? Put all the, it's like a recipe, right? Putting all the ingredients together. And you've talked about this, coach. Like you need every line should have a playmaker, a sniper, and somebody that goes and digs out the puck. Ideally, right? Like that's the chemistry that you want. But like if you're talking about a lineup with Michkov, Demidov, and Caulfield, then you have three out of your top six that they're probably not going into the corner to dig out the puck. Like, they're kind of similar players. So
So
they're
if you
great
have
players.
Dimitrov, Michkov, and Caulfield, right? And now you said,
Yeah.
okay, rebuild, rather construction. Do you think you
Yeah.
cannot trade Cole Caulfield and you don't get one of the best defensemen in NHL in return?
Okay. So,
Right defenseman, and that defenseman not be going to be better at
but coach,
Rebecca. Rebecca
so
last year, it wasn't a draft pick. It would not be the top 5 best defenseman in the NHL draft.
but coach, they already had Caulfield playing with them. So are you saying, okay, so let's draft Michkov and trade Caulfield for another defenseman
No, my
while
point is like
Caulfield
you
is
get the
already like
best player of the
playing?
NHL draft. That number 5 at 2023, it was Michkov. You pick Michkov, now you have Michkov. Wait 3 years, whatever it is. You get Dimitrov next year. You already get now Patrick Lenitz on the summer. So then you have Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. Now we look about, okay, next year, what we're going to do. Are we give everyone or are we going to trade one of them? That players are going to trade. Do you think there's not
So
going to bring a better player a long term when the Montreal as the right defenseman?
who's playing
I don't think
defense for you then? And that I
he's
again
he's magically trading. He's trading Caulfield for another magical defenseman that he think we can find in the marketplace for Caulfield.
but even if he could, like still like now you're counting on Mayu becoming something. Maybe he's not going to become. Savard's not going to be around forever. Matheson's not going to be around forever. Like so now you've got a spectacularly talented offensive top six, but you've got a mediocre defense, right? You've
Or
got you have like well, I
but
mean Gooley. Let's say Gooley, like maybe Gooley becomes a first pairing defenseman, and you've got Gooley, Hudson, Mayu, Jack-Eye, Struble, and who's your defense? Because you don't have Reinbacher anymore.
Well, coach is saying that they would in this scenario
They could trade
he
for
would
one.
have
Yeah.
trading Caulfield for for another right-handed defenseman. Okay,
Sure.
so maybe
But that's
there's
still
not a lot of right. So that's my point, coach, is that most NHL teams. So you're looking at this strictly from it's like, and you use the word talented. Okay, well that's very subjective, right? So talented, it can mean a lot, like Devin was saying, it can mean a lot of different things. If you're talking about offensive production, then yeah, like there's no question Demidov was the best available player, offensive player at that point. What I'm saying is that NHL teams don't necessarily just always look for the most quote unquote talented player. They're looking for the most valuable asset that they can draft at that point. Now, that includes talent, right? Like, I don't think anybody here is going to say that David Reinbacher is not talented. To be drafted top 10 in an NHL draft, you have to be talented. So he's definitely talented. But most NHL teams are going to value a right-handed defenseman over a scoring winger. That's just a fact. You can, like I said, you can debate or you can disagree with Montreal evaluating Reinbacher as a potential top pairing right-handed defenseman. Only time will tell if that's true. But if he does become a top pairing right-handed defenseman, I would bet, I don't know how much, because I'm not a betting guy, but I'd be willing to bet that most NHL teams, depending on their situation, would choose the top pairing right-handed defenseman over a scoring winger, unless they're going specifically for organizational need. That's just a fact, coach. Most NHL teams are going to operate that way. So I think Montreal operated in a way that's very consistent and how we want them to behave, which is think carefully. Like it's a very easy PR move to go and get Michkov. Like the whole fan base would have been super happy.
So if
So
I
it takes
listen to you, Marko, why they took Sakeski over Simon Nemec or David Jiricek?
because they felt he was a unique winger, and you can
So
have that.
the value of Sakeski, they believe, is more at Logan Cooley, Nemec, and Jiricek, Gauthier, and Shane Wright.
You can hear them. You can hear them have that conversation on the video that they released, coach. Like they talked about it openly. Like it's and Gordon talked about it. It's really rare for to draft a winger number one overall and value them. But they thought Slafkovsky was so unique because of his size, right? So there's different, and that's what I mean. There's different evaluations and criteria that teams look at and the value of the person that they're picking, where they are picking. So you can debate as to whether they evaluated the player properly, but I'm very confident that they didn't just do it out of a whim. Like, you know, like I like this guy more. They have a method behind why they did it, and only time is going to tell. You know, that's we'll see how it all works out.
Let's finish with a clash for everybody. And the clash tonight is absolute or not at all. Don't worry, David. I'm going to find you somewhere. Right there. There we go. That's it. That's everything. The first one about the Montreal Canadiens, I'm going to start with Devin. Absolutely not at all. Lane is going to get 55 points a plus at the end of the season.
I am going to say absolutely. I think he's on pace for right around that right now. I mean, I know you've probably done the math, coach, so you probably know what the pace is currently. But I think he's only going to get better. I think he's figuring things out, and he's improving day by day, game by game. And I think that his production will increase as the season goes on. So he's got 19 points right now in 28 games. Is that right?
Yeah, 19 point 28 game.
Yeah, so that's I'm going to say absolutely. He gets, assuming fingers crossed, knock on wood, he stays healthy. He will score more than 55 points this year. I think that's a pretty safe bet.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. Like, you know, the whole point of this is to disagree, but I have to say absolutely, especially now that he's playing on the first unit. And that would be incredible, guys. Like 55 points. It would be nice if he has at least one goal. It would just look weird if he has like 55 assists. It's starting to look
be better if he had no goal. That would be unique, Marko. That's maybe he get the goal. That's how he get the goal. He had no goal.
He'll get the Cy Young. If there's a Cy Young for offensive defenseman, then he would win it for sure. But yeah, like I think he'll get there, guys. Like I'm not sure I would have thought he would get over 50 points this summer, but man, like he's definitely trending that way, and especially now being on the first unit.
I think, Marko, you nailed it. That's exactly my reason behind that. Unit number one. That's the reason behind they get that exactly 59 points, Marko, at the end of the year. We talked about them earlier, and I want to see absolutely not. I'm going to start with Marko on that one. The New York Rangers make the playoff in 2024-2025.
Absolutely. They will figure it out. Like they're not gonna let it crumble to that extent. Like say what you will, it's not the best constructed roster, but they're gonna make something happen here. Like so I think Philadelphia right now is like, I think still like last year, they're playing a little bit above their head. So I think they'll still finish top three in the Metro. I think they can't continue to be this bad. So yeah, I think they'll make it in.
Devin,
I am going to say not at all.
Wow. Wow.
And if they don't, then they're in big trouble, because I think this contract that they gave to Shesterkin, I think, is going to sink them down the road. I don't think that was a very smart move by them. I don't think they can win with a goalie making $11.5 million a year. So I'm going to say no, and I will admit that I'm probably doing it in part to be different. But the reason for saying no, I think, is that there's just too much turmoil there right now. And as we pointed out earlier, their owner is very reactive, and he's very volatile. And I don't think it's an environment and an atmosphere that that breeds success. And I think that the longer they continue to spin, like you said, Marko, that you think that they'll figure it out eventually. I think that figuring it out becomes a lot harder when the world is spinning out of control around you, whether it's coming from management, whether it's coming from the ownership, whether it's coming from the coaching staff. If they don't figure it out and don't stop the world from spinning around them like that, I think they're going to find themselves too far out of it to come back from. So I will say not at all.
What a story that would be, man! If they don't make I don't think they're going to go far in the playoffs, but to not make the playoffs at all, wow, that would be huge.
I think they have enough important guys on that team who are very capable of disappearing. Like if Zibanejad disappears, if some of these, some of their important guys, just disappear, then they're in big trouble. I think they have guys who have the capacity to disappear, become invisible.
A lot of great comments right there, both of you. And then Artab said, I think he could be right about this. And Bob, we're going to follow with you. Is the point where Artab said, which team going to step up to push New York Rangers out of the playoff? That's a really good question, because if Buffalo, Detroit, Islanders, Pittsburgh, Ottawa, Montreal, whatever it is, right? Have a really good Philadelphia, have a really good streak of 9, 10, and 12, 13 game, could complicate the New York Rangers situation about that. Honestly, I feel they're going to make it barely, but my heart is I don't want them to make it, because Marko, I feel the same way. Like, that would be fun to see that kind of drama around the Rangers, and then they have a new team in the wild card we don't expect. So that's the way I see that. Now, for Bob Z, said they have a good player there at the goaltender. I agree with you, but Zibanejad struggled this year. Adam Fox does not play at the level he should be. En France we said that la zizanie est pognée dans la chambre des joueurs. And Peter Laviolette, whatever he said, you look upstairs, they have a zizanie between the GM, because the GM is a muppet. I don't know if it's a good word in English, but he's a muppet because the owner tell him what to do. He is, oh, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And then Larry Brooks, coach the team, GM the team at the New York Post. So put this together, guy. This is what we like for right now with the New York Rangers. But I will go with Devin on that one. Not allowed, but my heart, because of my heart. But I think they're going to make it. But it's not going to the team is going to turn over Marko. Like, they're going to, finish with 95 points. I don't see that.
Well, put it this way, guys. They're still, like I said, if you look at the stats, they're literally the worst team defensively in the NHL, and yet they're still somehow in a wild card spot. So if they're able to, I don't think they could play any worse than they've already played, and they're still, because of Shesterkin, they're still there. So even if they play 30% better and Shesterkin continues to play like this, then to me they'll still finish at least in the top 3 in the Metro.
Yeah, we'll see. We talk about him tonight. Imagine about this kid. So we're not to put him in the clash. Mishka, more point per game. Now pay attention. Point per game. Not a point at the end of the year, right? And Mishka could finish with 89 and then Celebrini with 76, but point per game over Celebrini. Yeah. Absolutely. On that allowed Marko. Let's go back with Marko.
I'm going to say yes, just because And coach, like earlier where you were comparing Michkov's rookie season to Bedar's rookie season, the one thing that you have to consider is that Michkov is way more surrounded than Bedard. Like Bedard is playing by himself, pretty much, right? He's playing with Khrushchev last year, and this year is not
And
much
last
better.
Tyler Hall also last
Yeah,
season, right?
yeah. So to me, not even close. Like Michkov he's playing with Couturier. He's got way better supporting cast. So to me, yeah, even I know Celebrini missing games, but just because of the team that he's playing with, I'm going to say Michkov will have more points per game.
Perfect.
Devin.
You're setting me up. I say not at all. I think Celebrini has been spectacular since he came back. I think he'll only get better. I think Michkov does probably have better guys around him than Celebrini. But if Will Smith can continue, I mean, Will Smith seems to be finding his way a little bit better. I also have to. Again, maybe it's a little bit jaded on my part, but I always keep the Tortorella factor in mind as well, right? Michkov is one bad shift away from being stapled to the end of the bench if Tortorella decides that he didn't back check hard enough or whatever.
Or maybe if he starts when he's signing autographs on his way out after being kicked out of the game, like he did last time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, any number of things could set Tortorella off, and Michkov doesn't strike me as the kind of kid who will deal well with that kind of. I don't know. Again, I just feel like Tortorella always kind of finds a way to blow good things up. So
I'm watching Calgary, guys. So, it's 6-5 right there with 1 minute to go remaining, and they Vladar 2 big save, and it's 4-3 Calgary right there, and empty net, and we have 25 seconds. Vladar make a save again, and we have a whistle with 28 seconds.
Wow.
So I'm watching. I'm going. And now we have not at all. I think Celebrini will pass Michkov.
I love Celebrini. He is. Yeah, he's been pretty awesome.
You know what? I'll be honest with you. I know he was great, but I'm really impressed by Celebrini so far. Like he played another level where I wasn't expect about that. Anyhow, Mr. Marko, we talk about this during summer, but the way he's played right now, do you think Montebo played 58 games plus the Devin? Absolutely not a lot.
Wow. 58 games. So that means that Primo or somebody else is playing 24. I will say absolutely. For a number of reasons. One, I don't think the Canadiens are going to make the playoffs. I don't think it's likely that they're going to make the playoffs. So I don't think there's any real sense in, you're not trying to save Montembeault for anything. I think that it certainly looks like he's going to be given a higher percentage of the games right now because Primo is not sort of pulling his weight as the backup. So yeah, I will say I say he will absolutely play more than 58 games. Yeah, I think I think 60, 60-ish would be what I would expect in a normal scenario between a starter and a backup. Maybe that's a little bit high. But I think given what we've seen from Primo so far this year, and given that, again, it's not a scenario where you've got a contending team that wants to, keep their starter, have their starter have a little bit of juice left for the playoffs. I don't think that's something the Canadiens have to consider for this year. So I will say that Montembeault will play greater than 58 games.
Ooh, this is a tough one. I think I had him at 55 games.
Yeah. He was over 50.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of factors that go into this, and one of them is the four nations. Are they going to want to, not write him as hard? Maybe into February, give him I don't know how they're going to manage that whole thing, and then it really depends. Like if Montreal is in the mix, then no question they're only going to use Primo on back-to-backs, I think, right? if they're in the mix. Yeah, Calgary just won. Good for the Habs.
Big win for the Calgary Flame, 4-3, the guys tonight. And the reason behind that, guys, is just because I follow the Flame all year long for the draft for the Montreal Canadiens. So I'm really excited about that. There we go. It looked like a Nigel Predator lost his jersey, Marko, Devin.
Yeah. That's like my least favorite jersey in the NHL. So
I will go, guys, with absolutely on that one because Primo's
now. I didn't give my answer, Coach. I'm gonna say absolutely not. I'm gonna say he's gonna finish just underneath. I think he'll finish around. He's gonna be right there, like 55. I think because they might be out of the mix towards the end, they might play him a bit less down the stretch.
I go with over 60 games for Montembeault.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah, 2 back-to-back game in December. And after that, there are maybe 7 or 8 more back-to-back during the year. So if you think about this, you have 55 more games to play. If you play 40 of them, you join the 60 games. So I would go with absolutely for that one. The last one, guys. This one's different. Detroit, Ottawa, Buffalo, Montreal. One team in the playoff for 2024, 2025. Any one of them. So I'll go with Marko, absolutely not at all.
Well, I'm glad you have Montreal. I'm glad you have Montreal in that group. Like I was complaining earlier, nobody seems to put Montreal in that group of Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo.
So they are only 4 points, Marko, behind.
Yeah, I know. That's why it's infuriating. You watch Toronto media and you watch all the other national, channels, around the NHL, and they always just talk about Detroit, Ottawa, and Buffalo, and Montreal's only 1 point behind all those guys right now. So I think that's why I really want them to stay in the mix so that we can hear a little bit more about them being covered. But what does that mean? So if one of these guys is not to I'm still not a big believer in Boston guys. So I still think that there's an opportunity there for. I think one of these. I'm going to say absolutely one of these teams. I think it's probably Ottawa because I still think Ottawa is going to pull it together. So I'm gonna say Ottawa is gonna sneak in there somehow, and I think Boston or one of those one of those Metro teams is gonna come out.
Go ahead, Devin.
I agree. I think one of those teams will make it. I'm already on the record saying New York won't make the playoffs, so I guess I'm kind of locked in a little bit. But I will say that one of those teams will make the playoffs. I agree.
But we say which one? Which one, Devin?
Yeah, I would say I agree with you. It should be Ottawa. It should definitely be Ottawa, but it could be Buffalo. I don't think it'll be Detroit. I don't have much faith in Detroit, and I don't think it'll be Montreal. I mean, I'd love for it to be Montreal, obviously, but I shouldn't even say that. I don't even really care whether they make the playoffs. Honestly, this year, I think there's benefits to it going either way. But I think Ottawa probably is the strongest. I mean, on paper, they're the strongest of those teams, and then Buffalo. But again, Ottawa management and coaching has let Ottawa down for a number of years, and I don't think they've gotten any better this year. So we'll see. But I do think that one of those teams will make it. I think that one of the traditional teams that we all expect to make the playoffs is going to fall out of the mix.
Hopefully the NHL doesn't think we're soft tampering by saying that Ottawa is going to make the playoffs, but we'll have to be careful on that one. Boston getting spanked 6-1 by the Winnipeg Jets right now. Love to see that.
Yeah, I think you both nailed it. I think you have one thing can make it. You talk about the goal differential -12 for the Boston Bruins, and that's not including the game tonight. Yeah,
6-1 right now.
That's -17, Marko. It's rare.
Yeah.
Washington was the only team made the playoff. One of the players, the Calgary, got a puck in the face tonight. Anyhow. And Ottawa is -4. And we know Ottawa, the second half, usually they are one of the top 10 teams.
Yeah.
Second half, I don't know because no pressure. But would be interesting what the trade deadline would be really interesting, Marco, this year because maybe we're going to have more team and the
in the mix.
mix. We can call it the mix. I don't know if the mix is the right word, but that's going to be
Yeah.
really interesting. But again, I think the team, one team, can have a streak of 7-8 W. That could change completely the situation for the wild card. We talk only on the Eastern Conference, but the wild card on the Western Conference, it's not. It's the same way also. Edmonton is now past the Calgary Flame, but I think if you look about the after Edmonton, Calgary, Seattle, Utah, the Blues, the Sharks, and Anaheim Ducks in Chicago. I don't see one of those teams I just mentioned to you can make the playoff. You agree or disagree, Marco?
I think there's a lot more parity in the East right now than in
Yeah,
the
that's
West.
the
Like,
right way to say that. Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Like the parity in the East, like, yeah, I think Montreal is like their last, I think, in the Eastern Conference, and they're only 4 points out of like a wild card, right? So you can't ask for better than that for parity, right? Like I think the worst team in the NHL right now is by far the Chicago Blackhawks.
Nashville right
So,
now, honestly, but
yeah, you still think Nashville is gonna, I don't think they're gonna make the playoffs, but I think they'll level out at some point. Like maybe they finish bottom five, but yeah, like right now you have San Jose is kind of playing a bit over their head right now too. But I think they were smart. That was another thing, guys, that we didn't mention, like trading their goaltenders away. Really good tank move by San Jose too, right? Like, what's a good smart move? Like, remember Buffalo, like when they were trying to tank for McDavid, like they just trading goalies like halfway through the season because he was getting too hot. So that's another sneaky part of that move for San Jose is Wedgwood, and the goaltending tandem they had was playing too well for them, right? So I think San Jose now with Gorgiev, in theory, so yeah, I think there's a lot more parity in the East, for sure.
right. Devin,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen in the East. I mean, everybody went into the season thinking that it was already set in stone. These 8 teams are going to make it. I think we're seeing already that that's maybe not going to be the case. So, yeah, I mean, it's the West. I think uh, one of the big things is I never like to make predictions because I mean, at the end of the day, you're just going to be wrong.
Yeah,
When you play the prediction game, you basically what you're doing is you're making a prediction in the hopes that you get it right, so you can brag about it at the end of the season. But the
yeah.
reality is that 9 times out of 10, you're going to be wrong. So we can sit there and say that this team's going to do it and that team's going to do it. So I kind of stay away from it if I can, but because anything can happen, right? I mean, not anything
Those
can
are my
happen, but
least favorite shows.
say it
Those are
again.
always my those are always my least favorite shows when Coach has me on to do predictions. I'm just glad that nobody is clipping those and playing them
okay,
again
about
later.
prediction, what do you think about Blackwood? Do you think it's going to be good with the Colorado Avalanche? You expect a good.
I was talking about that earlier, right? Like Steve Valiquette had some interesting theories about that coach. Like uh, we'll see how he succeeds in that kind of environment because he seems to be the kind of goalie. Wow, 8-1 now, Winnipeg over Boston. Ouch. Um, yeah, like one thing to watch out for Blackwood is he tends to play well when he gets a lot of volume shots, and we'll see if that he gets that in Colorado, right? So, will he be able to be as effective at stopping the high danger chances that he was in San Jose because he was getting warmed up quite a bit? So, it will be a big test for him. He's never really played in front of a good team, so but he's a good goalie. He was once considered. He was being discussed for Four Nations like 3 years ago, right? Like, and he's fallen out of favor, but he has the talent. Let's see if he can put it together.
But Marco, I was just to ask you that question because I pick Blackwood in my fantasy team. I was shocked to see that. I took advantage. You guys, you were sleeping, and me, I was awake. It was daylight and tail end, so I go on my fantasy team. I look, I said, he's still there on the board. So I think
Nice.
I think it's going to be good on the fantasy because I think he's going to get more W compared to San Jose first of all. So
Good pick.
As long as they don't ask him to take a vaccination, then he won't be able to travel. He won't be able to travel to Canada and won't be able to play any games in Canada.
He's an anti-vaxxer guy?
Well, when he was playing with, I believe it was when he was playing with the Devils during COVID, he refused to take the vaccine and he couldn't travel with the. He was him and Bertuzzi were the two guys I think were.
Right.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was him.
Well, I'm sorry, guys. I stopped to talking about this, but it turned around to be crazy between Winnipeg and Boston. The coach screaming each other behind the bench. Joe Sacco and Scott O'Neill. And then we have Zadorov, Frederic, and we have 4 fights back to back. Almost when it was 6-1. So maybe you can check the highlights between that game if you want to go some action. At the third period, when it was the score 6-1, you can check what could happen for that one. So that's happening between Winnipeg and Boston. Now it's 8-1, the score between that part over there. I know it's late. I want to finish with that because I don't see you guys until next week. I would like to hear from you. Your prediction for the game against Pittsburgh, Marko. Do you have some concern? What your prediction?
My concern is, like, again, they have to take it up a notch from what they did against Anaheim. Pittsburgh is playing a lot better hockey than they were a little while ago. And Montreal has not had a lot of success against Pittsburgh. So I have my concerns, Coach. We'll see how it plays out. Wow, that was a bit loud, the music. But I'm going to say 4-3 for Pittsburgh. That's my prediction.
Devin.
I'm going to call a big game for Montreal. I think that last game was a bit of a wake-up call, and I think it will be a bit of a motivation booster to know that they didn't play their best hockey, but they won anyway. I think that Dach, Slafkovsky, and Laine showed signs of improvement, and I think it's going to be a matter of time before they break out. The first line obviously has been playing really, really good. So I think Pittsburgh, obviously they've been playing a little bit better, but I think they are right for the taking. If you're asking me to put a score on it, Marko, you put the heat on me by actually putting out a score. I will say it will be a 5-2 Montreal win.
Whoa.
Oh.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot of goals for Montreal.
We'll go to it. Let me take a note of that. No, we'll see. But Marko, I'll go with Devin on the W. I think Montreal is going to respond well. It's going to be final 4-3. And the first one to know that. But Lennartson scored his first goal in NHL Thursday night. So that would be my prediction. Awesome. We want to thank Marko and Mr. Devin for your participation tonight at the Notebook. It was a pleasure to talk with us about this. It was a bit controversial about Michkov, but at the end of the day, I think at the end it will be good for Montreal the long term to have Demidov, and we'll see what the development of Rebecca. So until the next time, my friend, one thing we want to remind both of you, because you did it again. You are awesome. You are amazing. You are the best. And remember, you have greatness inside of you. Be well, be healthy. Find a way not only dominate your day, but find a way to dominate the second app of one. Marko.
You're 2024.
He did it again. Have an amazing, great night, great week for Marko. And Mr. Devin, less snow for you after a great week in Orlando.
Merci beaucoup, Coach. Thank you very much for having me. I always appreciate it.
You're welcome. Have a great night, both of you. See you next time. Good night.
Bye, Marko.
Thanks, guys. Great job, Devin. Great job, man. Thanks.
You too. Thanks.
Good night. The Hockey Nation Show, the Habs Nation want to remind you one more thing. We'll be back tomorrow night for the Laval Rocket. Join us live at 7 o'clock. Laval hosts the Rochester American. We want to finish also with this. The Hockey Nation Show, the Habs Nation want to tell you one more thing. We love you, friends. Thanks all the moderators, all the people in the chat. I can't wait to see you tomorrow night. Booyah!